welcome to the Travelman Podcast. I'm your host, Ben, and if you're joining me for the first time, then I say hello and thanks for listening. If you're a returning listener, then I say thanks again for returning. On today's Sharktastic episode, I'll be chatting to Cristina Zenato, who's a professional diver, shark whisperer, and the founder of People of Water. She's also very famous because she's the lady that takes hooks out of sharks' mouths in the Bahamas. So sit back and enjoy the podcast. Cristina, thanks for joining me today. You're situated in the Bahamas, right? And how's the Bahamas at the moment? What's the weather like?
Well, right now it's actually doing good. The Atlantic is going crazy, apparently. We're watching all these weird storms that are churning around the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico, but we've been having pretty clear weather. It's summer, so it's extremely hot and extremely humid. And hopefully we will be spared this year.
Oh, wow. Is that weather that you normally get every year?
Well, we are in the hurricane zone. Last year, my island, Grand Bahama Island, was actually hit by, one of the strongest storms ever recorded in this hemisphere, Hurricane Dorian. And hurricanes and tropical storms are traditional of this time of year, June through November. So yes, this is the hot, humid storm type of year.
Wow. Yeah, we've just come out of winter, so we're just getting a bit of a bit of spring weather now, which is beautiful. It's about 23 degrees in Melbourne today, which is fantastic. But talking about the Grand Bahama and the Bahamas, everyone perceives living on an island in the Bahamas as a paradise. What do you think of this?
Well, it is a beautiful place. The Bahamas have been featured from NASA because of the color of the water. You can see it from space, and they make them so amazing. Wow. And on a beautiful day, on a sunny day, you go to the beach, and it's just breathtaking. But it is an island, and it is on a developing country, and it is a place that is afflicted by storms. So, like all paradises, there's quite a lot of things to deal with that maybe sometimes people don't realize. I think it's easy to live on an island if you have, the means to come and go however you wish. But like once you start living on the island and you make your life here, you realize that, and my island is pretty big. It's about 100 miles long, 130 kilometers long, but it is 130 kilometers long. There's only
it's a big island.
Yeah, but there's only so much you can see. There's only so much you can do.
Sure.
There's only so much, road trip that you can take. I mean, it takes an hour.
Oh, absolutely.
2 hours to drive from one end to the other, and you're done.
Oh, okay.
And it has some limitations in, like things that come on the island. Shops are available. So people think, it's a paradise, but they don't realize to manage your day-to-day life, the requirements that it brings in, from the silliest things, headphones, charging cables for your phone, to never mind the advanced gear that I use for my diving. It is all have to be shipped, and it has to be organized in advance, and it has to have quite a lot of preparation. So it's not as easy as it looks. It is as beautiful as it looks, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah. And does all that stuff get shipped from the US?
Well, it depends, but most of the time you have to organize it with the US, then you have to organize it with a shipping company, with a broker to receive it. So you have to plan ahead. There's a lot of ahead planning for anything that you might need or want, especially, like I said, for most of the tools that I use for my work.
And what about fresh food on the island? Does the Bahamas produce their own fruits and vegetables?
Not so much. We have a very difficult terrain. We're primarily made of limestone. So it's very porous rock. It's known as a karst terrain. It has a very, very thin layer of soil on it. And so when it rains, most of the water disappears below ground.
Washes off.
Yes, washes down. And it goes into a freshwater reservoir, which is on top of the caves. But it makes agriculture rather difficult. There are some areas where, they try, there's pineapples and papayas. But then again, you have a hurricane that comes through and can destroy a plantation that took 10 years to grow. So most of the fruits and vegetables and food in general is imported, usually by ship. So there's like ship that comes into port, and there are some local people that have like little small markets that you can go to. But yes, we're a little bit dependent from the outside world.
Okay. And what about fresh water? You said you've got the underwater cave system. Does that give people of the Bahamas fresh water?
Yes. So traditionally, the Bahamas have access to fresh water that comes from the underground that sits in the caves. Currently, our island is suffering from salt water because of Hurricane Dorian, because the Hurricane Dorian sat on the north side of Grand Bahama Island and flooded the Little Bahama Bank, and 70% of the island was underwater, ocean water, with some areas up to 12 meters of water. So all the salt water that came over, some retreated back, but a lot of it went through the limestone, and now has to, because of the different density, has to make its way through the fresh water before it goes into the salt water again. So most of the island is currently receiving fresh water. There's few pockets, including mine. So it's about another 30% of the island that still has the salt water coming out of the tap from Hurricane Dorian from last year. But in general, we have fresh water. The only island that doesn't have fresh water is New Providence, where the capital of Nassau is. And that's because, and is one of the issues that I work, to bring awareness to, is overly populated, and the pollution has affected the water table. Also, the way sometimes they dig through the islands actually damages some of the capacity of the rocks and the water tables.
And they don't have a desalination plant there?
They are, yes, reverse osmosis. You can find reverse osmosis water.
I actually got you on today to talk about something really cool that I saw on board Panda. So I don't know if you know that you were featured on the board Panda video on Facebook.
No.
You probably know.
I didn't know, actually, because I think I actually told them I wasn't interested. But
Oh, really? Well, they still showed your video, and it was really cool, though, and that's one of the reasons why I reached out to you, because, I mean, from someone that doesn't really know, looking at you trying to take hooks out of shark's mouth does look like a deadly exercise. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you started, with this exercise and what it means to you? Because it was extraordinary. I was just so happy to see you saving animals, because I'm a big animal person, and any video that I see, when I see an animal getting saved, I start to cry. Well, I'm a big baby.
Well, those are the reasons why, and why I like, how did it start? They're the same thing. I love sharks, and I love my sharks, the one that I spend so much time with, and so removing hooks for me is wanting to do whatever we want to do for a loved one. We want them to feel good. So if the hook shows me that they're not feeling good, they're not eating well, they have infections, the jaw is completely swollen, as someone who loves them, I just want them to feel good. So that's how it started. It started I have this capacity of interacting with these 20, 25 animals. And when I see them in certain situations that I can fix, I will try to fix, because there's certain things I can't fix. It then moved into people realizing, it was really interesting when I started removing hooks. I had people saying, oh, you should leave the hooks in and let them rust. And then I had the people going, oh, wow, I never thought about the fact the sharks could actually hurt. And so it became like a very good open conversation. And the hooks in themselves became the symbol of the fact that we do have an effect on our world, on our animals. And it could be as simple as a hook, or as damaging as everything that is being experienced in the last few years on this planet, right? Extinction of animals, wildfires, extreme hurricanes. So we do have this effect, and the hook became just this, like I said, a symbol. And so people start thinking about sharks in a different way and go, oh, wow, but they're actually animals. And yes, they can actually hurt. And then I received the next step, which is that, well, I wanted to remove hooks from sharks because I want to help sharks. And that opens the next conversation, which is, well, you don't really need to remove hooks. Here's a list of what you can do: plastic pollution, reduce consumption, reduce carbon footprint, better seafood choices if you eat seafood, better, food choices in general. And the list continues.
Oh, absolutely, Cristina. And do the sharks? I mean, obviously, I've seen the videos. I don't know if my listeners have seen the videos, but I can tell that the sharks really like you. But how did you know? How do you know at the start that what you were doing was going to be good for the sharks? How did you know that the sharks were feeling better? Did they show you a sign?
Yes. So a shark with hook, depending on where the hook is lodged and the consequences, obviously, of the lodging, was refusing to feed, was expressing behavior. For example, I watched sharks that had a hook with a wire coming out, and they will dive down into the sand and literally scrape their body against the sand, trying to remove this foreign object. I watched their pectoral fins. It will constantly twitch as the wire will touch the pectoral fin. Or they will, if, for example, they will be hit by something like the floaters that was behind the hook, they will be taking off as fast as they could. So it would definitely disturbing their regular swimming, eating, and all of that. Some of them also develop huge infections. And as soon as I removed the hooks, the sharks resumed their regular behavior. So swimming nice and relaxed over the sand, none of those erratic movements, none of those dive down trying to remove the hook. The infection disappears. So it was just simply watching observing the behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And where is it taking place? Is it taking place in the Bahamas?
This is in Freeport, Grand Bahama, where I'm based. Yes.
Okay. Have you done it anywhere else?
Not the hooks. No, I traveled around to meet other people and work with different species of sharks and understand relationship between humans and sharks, a better coexistence, shark tourism, different ways of promoting shark conservation. But I'm also a firm believer that one size does not fit all. So that means it's something we do with a creature in a certain environment with certain techniques. It doesn't mean that I should go around the world and try to do that with everything that moves in front of me. There's also
I wouldn't do it.
Well, no, there is a relationship that we build. There's a time spent in the water. I didn't start removing hooks the first year I was working with sharks. It took me a few years to start, understanding how they worked and how they moved. So, and obviously that depends also on the shark size. There's a lot of people send this kind of like, I find them like really silly messages. Oh, I want to see you try it with a great white. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not stupid.
That was my question. Would you try it on a great white? And I know the answer.
No, because the great white is a different kind of shark. First of all, they can sit still because they do not have buccal pumping like many of the other species, including the Caribbean reef sharks that I work with. They have to constantly swim in order to ventilate. We're talking about a different size animal. So I was trying to explain to someone to understand the concept, right? There is a huge difference between being hit, if you're a pedestrian, by a bicycle or being hit by a truck, even if they're going at the same speed. You can have a bicycle going 15 miles per hour, 10 miles per hour, and it hits you, you will have a certain consequence. You have a truck that is still going at 10, 50 miles per hour, you will have a different consequence. And so one size does not fit all. We're talking about animals that are like 6-7 meters long. My sharks are 2 meters long. So
2 meters.
Right. And then you're also talking about a different width of the mouth. So what I did with my sharks, stuck in my hand inside their mouth, it's okay. If I did that with a great white, I will be up to my waist. It's not a competition on the biggest shark for me. It's about making the sharks feeling better because I am with them the same amount of time I am with my pups. And then it is about showing other people that there is a need to protect sharks, which does not inherently requires to remove the hooks. It just requires for us to understand sharks and understand how we're affecting their environment and how to change that.
Yeah, no, well done on that. It's just amazing. And obviously, even though these sharks are still 2 meters long, you still got to be careful, right?
Absolutely. So I use a chain suit, which is made of stainless steel from Neptunic. They're like handmade. And it prevents what I call accidental bites. But also, as I'm operating so close to the teeth, it prevents scrapes with the teeth and all of that. Said that, the suit does not substitute for knowledge and a little bit of common sense. Right. So there's always an evaluation work that I have to do. There's the hooks that I can try, the hooks that I cannot try. There's the shark that lets me try, the shark that doesn't let me try. And so it's kind of like a dance, right? They come in, they allow me to try to remove the hook. It hurts, they swim away, they come back in, and we go back and forth, sometimes 30, 40 minutes to remove one hook. But the amazing thing is that they let me try.
And are they all pretty similar, or do they have personalities?
Sharks have personalities. Fish have personalities. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. There's just such a variety of them. Some sharks are shy. Some sharks are more bold. Maybe like, if you were compared to maybe to school, you have like the little shy shark, and then you have the bully that comes in and is kind of like, my territory. And you have sharks that learn really fast, the sharks that take some time to learn. So there's different behaviors that they express. So some of my sharks allow me to pet them. Some of my sharks have been there for 10, 15 years, but they still do not like to lay in my lap. I try to make an idea, give people an idea, is if you have cats.
Yes, I have too.
Right, you might have the cat that as soon as you sit on the couch may come and sit on your lap, but he or she will come and sit on your lap however long he or she deems that it's okay. If you were there's some cats that if you try to pick them up to come on your lap and sit down with them, they'll slid out of your hands and go, no, sorry, I don't want to sit on your lap right now.
That's true.
Right? So there's sharks do the same. There's some sharks that will come in and say, hey, hi. And as soon as they see me, they'll come straight into my stomach and allow me to pet them. And some sharks that will swim around me and allow me to pet them as they swim by, but they will not sit still in my lap. It's their choice. It's not mine.
Have they ever been aggressive to you? Any sharks in particular that you've been swimming with?
I don't consider sharks aggressive. I don't like to use that word because aggressive to me, and this is a personal thing, right? So to answer your questions, sharks can be intense. But it depends on what you're doing, right? So let's say you're a spear fisherman and you have a fish that is at the end of your spear. You might find out that even in Caribbean reef sharks, which is usually very tranquil sharks, will start coming after you. But it's not coming after you. It's coming after the fish that is at the end of your spear, right? So you might notice a behavior in which they are swimming really fast, coming up in spiral, aiming for the spear. So the reasonable thing to do is never discuss with the shark to whom the fish belongs to. That is very, very good advice. So if you release the fish, you'll notice that the sharks will grab the fish and swim away. So was that aggressive, or was just that the behavior of a shark that is going after what nature tells it to do, which is, hey, there's a fish that is bleeding, struggling, needs to be eliminated because it's not viable to our web anymore.
No, that is a fantastic explanation. I hope many people understand and take that to account. That was perfect. With a great white, do you think they are misunderstood? The word I use, like aggressive, they're intense. They're crazy intense animals. But I think, I think they could be misunderstood, and especially from Jaws, the film Jaws. And I think, they were made out to be crazy. Yeah,
there's a lot of misunderstanding about great whites especially. And the reason why is they are, unfortunately, their looks are not their best forte. And the reason why is a great white because of the way they feed, they tend to have quite a lot of scratches and scars on their face. Because when they grab the seal, and usually they grab it like in the midsection, the seal will turn around and trying to free itself, right, by aggressively scratching whatever side of the shark's face they can reach. So they have all these scars, all these, like open wounds, and then their teeth, they're actually further visible because they're further big. And so it's a look that is not appealing, like, let's say, a blue shark or a Caribbean reef shark. They already have a little bit of, scar face. But yes, they do have they're very much misunderstood. Great whites are a predator, an apex predator. I mean, one of the apex predators. And they're still very cautious in what they do. One of the things we don't understand is they're still evaluating a return on investment when they investigate a prey. It takes a long time for a great white to decide to go after a prey, a lot of evaluation, because at the moment they expended all that energy. If they don't capture the correct prey, then it's going to be a lot of energy that have no food to recover with. And also remember, they are predators. So they are trying, if they become injured, they can't feed anymore. So it's in their best interest to go after the prey when they are absolutely certain that it is safe for them as well. So they're not indiscriminate, they don't just go after everything that moves and try to bite everything that is around. They're very much observing. Years back, I was fortunate enough to be shown some behind-the-scene videos. They were shot by this TV, fairly famous TV channel, and what they wanted to try to film is the great whites breaching, but from under the water. So normally we're used to see air jaws, right? We see like the shark jumping, and that's called breaching.
Jumping out of the water.
Well, they wanted to film the below. They wanted to actually see a shark coming, noticing the surfboard, and try to film that decision-making moment. They had hours of quote-unquote wasted, but not wasted, it was really cool, footage of these great whites coming underneath the surfboard, trying to go for the surfboard, and changing their mind at the last minute in an evaluation that told them, hey, this is not food. It looked like it from 20 meters away, but now it's not. And they make like this quick turns away from the board, which brings me back to Jaws. But Jaws is a movie. I actually don't have it against Jaws. I know it did a lot of damage, but also at the end of the day, it's a movie. So I blame the people for putting the movie into like a reality concept, because I blame the people. We have brains. We should be able to that. What I blame, though, is more the nature, quote unquote, TV programs that are still out there showing the breaching shark. They don't say, hey, we wanted to film the breaching shark, but it took us 20 hours of footage to get this. And so in a certain way, really show what it, like the real portrayal of the great white, right? It's not they put a surfboard in and the great white ate the surfboard. It took hours and hours and hours. Why don't you show us that? Why don't you share the true nature of this great white that took so long for all these animals to swim underneath this surfboard to represent the seal? It was supposed to be a fake seal, right? It had like little appendages and stuff like that. But why don't you show us how many sharks actually turned around and didn't strike the board, right? So what we're so used to see is gaping jaws into the bait, gaping jaws into the air jaws. And I even had people sending me messages, said, why I don't see, why your sharks look so different? And I'm like, they're just swimming. And they're so used to see these gums, extended jaws, because the jaws of sharks are actually mobile. They can actually extend. And so all their gums show. They were so used to see sharks like that they didn't even realize that actually sharks look completely different when they're swimming through the ocean.
Yeah, they look really beautiful when they're swimming through the ocean, actually. Very streamlined. So considering those great whites, obviously when they do attack something like that's shaped like a seal, and then they dart back and go, "Oh, that wasn't any food," it's because they're getting confused, right?
Yes, there's. I know Australia recently has suffered, this year especially, has suffered quite a few shark attacks, and it does not take away from the absolute terror that someone must feel by being, approached by a great white, maybe coming untouched, or unfortunately being bitten and passing away by a great white. That doesn't take it away, but it is a wrong place at the wrong time, and is like so seldom, right? What happens is the shark in that moment, when it makes that decision, has decided that that is a food. People are go, "Oh, that's mistaken identity." No, in that moment, it doesn't matter. It just, the shark decided, like, that is food. I'm going to strike.
I'm going to strike, yeah.
If you remember, if I'm saying, at the moment they do realize it's not food, which could be many times underneath surfers or swimmers, as they're swimming, they're like, "Oh no, that's not food," and they will abort, because we are not food to the sharks. So those unfortunate events in which humans are bitten by the great whites or the sharks is because it was a decision that at the moment we were food. So we were in a position, in a movement, and we ticked all the boxes. And it, like I said, it's unfortunate, but it's so rare and so seldom compared to the amount of people that are in the ocean and the amount of sharks that are in the ocean.
Is there anything that we can do to protect ourselves, though, from sharks if we are swimming in waters that maybe could be infested? Well, not infested with sharks, but could attract sharks. Is there, like, those devices you can put on yourselves? The beeping.
So the first rules are, you need to understand the sharks. Yeah. So you need to understand where you are. So people are like, "Well, do you ever encounter great whites?" I'm like, "No, I live in the Bahamas. We don't have great whites. They usually cruise the Gulf Stream deep, like 1,000 feet deep, and they keep it in the cooler waters and keep heading north. They have no food, and the water here is not their territory, right? We have tiger sharks and bull sharks. So understand where you are and understand the sharks of your territory. Okay. Then you need to look into is the activities you're doing. So there are higher risk activities and lower risk activities, right? And then you need to try to mitigate the risks of those activities. And sometimes is one of the things that I try to tell people is you might have to decide that in that day, that specific day, that activity is not worth the risk. It doesn't mean the sharks are vicious or mean or anything like that. There is a series of boxes that you can check and say, "You know what? Not today." For example, dusk, dawn, murky waters, extremely habited areas with a lot of seals, a lot of pups, a lot of like smaller seals and things that if we're talking about great whites. If you're talking about tigers, for example, areas with turtles, again, murky water, dusk, dawn, be out there by yourself, isolated, unnecessary splashing and things like that. So there are things that do attract sharks. Okay. What we need to do as humans is sometimes understand that maybe it is our time and duty in a certain way, as we consider ourselves the smartest species, to come out of the water. So when I just had a conversation with someone that was complaining about the fact the sharks are ruining his best surfing spot.
Oh, yeah.
And the conversation was about protecting sharks, and the commentary was more kind of like, "Well, yeah, shark ecosystem, blah, blah, blah." Literally, you wrote blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, no. I said, you are putting your surfing needs above the fact that actually the ecosystem needs the sharks. But his point was like, well, maybe we should eliminate the sharks so I can surf safely. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
It doesn't work like that. I'm sorry. I know it's horrible. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to encounter people that disagree with me. But if there are areas that are more prone to shark patrolling because there are rich areas for the sharks, are areas that maybe we should avoid swimming. Some of them make perfect sense. I'll give you an example. In South Africa, in front of Gansbaai, between Dyer Island and the seal colony, right? So there's a little island that has over 20,000 birds nesting on it. And then there's another island which creates a small channel with another, 10,000 seals on it. Okay. The channel in the middle between these two islands is shark territory. That is actually where the operators go with the cage to look for great whites, but it's also a place where obviously the great whites patrol. It will be very intuitive for people to say, well, this is not a place where I'm going to go swimming or surfing. And that makes perfect sense because it's kind of like a limited area. We might find ourselves that sometimes we might have to stretch this concept to miles and miles of beach. I don't have any other solution. I still believe that if that were the case, is maybe we also need to start considering then, why is this happening? What has changed? Is this happening all along? Have sharks changed behavior? So there are instances in the world where sharks have changed behavior and are targeting more humans, but I don't think humans for humans, but they're targeting because they find themselves in the only place where both humans and sharks now can find, like the water and sustenance. So the encounters then become more frequent.
But I mean, it is their water. It's not ours.
It is their water. We have the option to stay out of the water. They can't.
Yeah.
They just can't stay out of the water.
And talking about staying in the water, so you're a professional diver, you're a PADI course director, a tech instructor for caves, gases, rebreathers. All that's so super interesting to me. Do you reckon you could tell me a little bit more about all this and how you teach people to primarily dive in caves? That's something that really interests me, and how to use the equipment properly.
Well, yes. So they're all different fields. I am the PADI course director means I can actually train professionals. So I'm an instructor trainer. So I teach instructor how to teach people. And then in the technical world, the things came all into, they are kind of like integrated. So my sheer passion is cave diving. When I came here, I discovered the sharks, and then shortly after discovered the cave, I became then a cave diver. But then in order to go cave diving, you realize that you need longer bottom times, and then you need to be able to do decompression. With that comes, the need to be thermally protected. And so as you explore this world, you basically start adding your dry suit, your nitrox, your trimix, your decompression procedures, and then obviously I evolved into the rebreather because it is an ultimate tool to allow for longer exposure, less decompression time, less thermal regulation issues. And I try, when people ask me to teach them something, I usually send back a series of questions. I have conversation with my students. There's students future students I spend hours on Skype with. And I say, why? I obviously ask the level. What level do you have? Because there are some standards that I need to fulfill. But then I want to know the reasons why. What brings you here? What are your motivations? What are your goals? So that I can actually create something that is suitable for you, and not just like, okay, let's do the course, fill in the boxes, and here's your card. The way I go about teaching it has a structure that is dictated by the agency, but then it has my personal observations. So we start with the rules. Okay, this is the things we have to do, for example, in the pool, and this is the gear configuration that you have to do. And then from there, we develop depending on the person. And so it's performance-based rather than just a skill-based. It's just on the performance. One of the things that I try to tell people, especially in cave and technical diving, is you are going into an alien world. If underwater in the open ocean, it's already as alien as it could be because you can't breathe, you can't see, you can't swim unless you have all your tools. Now you're underground, inside a tunnel, underwater. Sometimes you could be a kilometer. That's, as an explorer, sometimes I'm like 3-4 kilometers from the entrance, from the sunlight. So then it becomes a matter of like, you have to go using the best spacesuit that you have. So from an economical point of view, I have an open discussion and said, this is not a sport to be cheap about. Right. So I will tell you, this is the gear you need, and this is how you need to maintain your gear. And because this gear needs to keep you alive from 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer, 500 meter, whatever it is, but you have to basically rely on it for everything that you're doing down there. So they're heart-to-heart conversation. How you teach it is time in the water, repetition. Yeah. I usually tell people we'll spend as much time as you need on skills, on knowledge, and we'll just work on that. The only thing that I also do through, talking to them, I said, you need to understand there's one thing I can't teach you. I can show it to you, but I can't teach you. You need to come in with it in his attitude. You need to want to learn. You need to understand that you're coming in to change something in the way you perceive things, in which you approach things, and in the which you move through the water. So mine is not going to be a criticism for the sake of criticism. Is going to be an input to allow you to have the best study you can have to survive into this environment. And with that, I'm also going to teach you how to have the best mind to do that.
That makes sense. It would be something that, I guess, if you recognize someone there that could probably never dive a cave, would you tell them? Would you tell them up front, look, I just don't think this is right for you? Because cave diving is just so dangerous.
I had people coming in to do like the full cave, and I said, no, you're going to, because there's different levels. And I told them, I said, we are going to sit at this lower level, which requires for you to be accompanied by, that gives you these limitations. And I tried to explain. So sometimes I've done it at the end, sometimes I've done it during the course. And then I said, we'll spend the rest of the course fine-tuning what we have acquired, but I will not bring you any further. But yes, I have. Gotcha. I've done this on all levels, at the professional level. I've done it at the cave level. I've done it at the gas mixing level. For me, I'll put in as much time as needed. But if I don't see that mental attitude, then sometimes I may not be able to transfer that. And I'll give you an example. There's one example that I use all the time. I had 2 different students, 2 different times in my life. And they were both cave divers, learning to cave dive. And as you were swimming, obviously adapting to the gear and all of that, every once in a while, these 2 students, like I said, 2 separate courses, but they will lose their buoyancy. So they will be swimming along, and then they will take maybe a deeper breath and slowly kind of like float into the ceiling of the cave. It's like a tunnel that is maybe 1.5 meters high. So they will just basically niche themselves into the ceiling of the cave, and they will I will just watch it. I will have to figure it out, right? So one of the students I still remember, would absolutely become extremely frustrated. I could hear this student screaming through the regulator, and he would be shaking his body and just like fighting, and just pushing against the walls with the elbows and kicking the fins down and all of that. And then this other student on a totally different course would instead stop, right? And I could feel it, that the student would exhale and just think, okay, I made something wrong. Something happened to my gear. I'm kind of like lodged a little bit into this little niche. Nothing dangerous. Obviously, I'm there. We're just, like I'm just floating next to them, watching them. But I'm like, okay, you need to figure this one. And slowly figured out how to descend a little bit and then move forward again, right? So they both had a buoyancy problem, right? But the response of one student told me that it was an extremely dangerous response in a cave. The other response tells me, it's like, wow, this is a perfect mindset. Stop, breathe, think, relax, solve your problem, and act. So although they both manifested the same problem, which then slowly obviously has to go away by the end of the course, undoubtedly, the reaction tells me the different mindset. And if that mindset reflects in every time I do something, I call myself the cave fairy, right? So we'll do cave dives where you just go cave dive and you learn how to cave dive. And there's cave dives in which we will simulate disturbances, right? A light failure, a line loss, a body that is gone. We simulate as part of the training and all the standards. That mindset that I observe, if it keeps repeating itself, then that tells me that the attitude is not safe enough to come into the cave.
That's fair enough. And with the caves, Cristina, are they freshwater caves generally, or are they a bit of a mix?
They're both
of salinity.
So in the Bahamas, we have in land caves that have a freshwater lens on the top. And then once it hits the salt water, is the saltwater level, obviously, of the island that comes underground. And then we have ocean blue holes, which are primarily saltwater. But there's like some ocean blue holes. The first one I ever connected. I swam from the ocean into land. So it was really fun. It took me 5 years to swim. But as I was swimming through the ocean blue hole, which is salt water, at a certain point, I arrived far enough into land that I could see the freshwater lens. And I knew I was actually swimming under the beach and under the ground because I could start seeing the freshwater. And so,
so you actually see that, yes, the difference in the water.
It's called the halocline. It's basically a transition between different salinity water. It doesn't specifically have to be fresh and salt. It could be fresh and brackish, or brackish and salt. And that's kind of like a line, and almost like a fake surface. There's some places where it's extremely marked, some places instead where as you swim through, it becomes very blurry, as if you were diving without a mask on, so your eyes are like blurry. And then as the two medias mixes, and then if you keep going down or keep coming up, your vision comes back. But if you swim in the middle of the halocline, it's like a blurred vision. But it's visual, yes. You can actually see it stashed against the walls. With the light, you can play with the light and create like this line.
Oh, wow, that's cool as. And do you notice a difference when you're actually swimming through freshwater opposed to seawater?
Yeah, there's a temperature difference. Not much. I mean, it's not many degrees, but like if it's summer and I'm diving in the land cave, the average temperature in the land cave is 24. Well, the ocean is 28, 29. So if I'm diving from the fresh of the land cave through the salt water, I will feel like a warming up of the water. There's also a difference in buoyancy, because when I go from fresh water to salt, when I go from salt to fresh, my buoyancy changes. Is counterintuitive, because we're used as divers, when you descend, you need to add air to counteract the pressure of the water. But when you descend and you go from fresh and you hit the salt water, it's like hitting a pillow. So when you hit the salt water, you actually have to deflate a little bit to keep going down. And when you come up from the salt water, you're floating. And as soon as you hit the fresh water, you feel very heavy, because obviously it's less dense. So it doesn't keep you afloat. So as you go up and you hit the fresh water, you actually have to inflate, which is opposite what we teach in scuba diving. You actually inflate going down and deflate coming up. But when you pass through these two medias, you actually have to deflate going down when you hit the salt water and inflate coming up when you hit the fresh water.
I hope you enjoyed part 1 of my conversation with Cristina. Be sure to look out for part 2, which will be out very soon. And if you've liked what you've heard today, you can follow Cristina at her website, CristinaZenato.com. Thank you, phone, for that notification. And you can also follow her on social media. Her handles are all at Cristina Zenato. She's on Instagram and Twitter. She has a Facebook page, which you can like. And remember, I release Wednesday at the end of each month. And if you haven't checked out my other podcast yet, which is Unnatural Podcasts, then check that out. I speak about weird, unnatural stories that you may think are unbelievable, but they are. A lot of them are true, and some of them are just still like head scratches. And I'm joined weekly by my co-host Steve from Thinking Sideways podcast. So check that out on the podcast app of your choice. And you can always reach me at www.travelmanpodcast.com. You can email me at travelmanpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow Travelman Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. On Facebook, I have a page and group set up, so like and join them. And I will see you on the next episode of Travelman Podcast. Coolness.